I graduated from college, and a week later I was on a plane to Taiwan. Now, to imagine me as a 21-year-old, I have a photo that we passed around. I was going to Taiwan because I was teaching English at the YMCA there. And it was a interesting year because I had lots of different cultural experiences. One was, for example, I had students and I was teaching conversation, which was a really wonderful gig. And I had great students, and in the summertime when I arrived, they were mostly my age, college students who wanted to learn how to converse in English. Their grammar was probably better than mine, but saving face is a real notion, a value, and so making mistakes in front of the teacher and each other was hard, and conversation was the skill they really needed. I loved going out with my students because they wanted to practice English and I wanted to go around on adventures. So I got invited several times to the homes of my students, and Confucianism was alive and well, which meant that even though I was only 21, a teacher is very revered in that culture. So I had this special status, which was pretty amazing. And I was invited to different homes, and I was practicing my chopsticks 3 times a day, but it was still a little awkward. And when I got to somebody's home, one of the things that made me a little bit uncomfortable at first, and then I got used to it, is that the Chinese love to stare at people. And so I'd be eating, and I was not as fast as the family members. And so when they were done, they would just stare at me, still eating, and it was a little bit uncomfortable. And then finally, I said something that was really resonated, and big smiles. And I said, my grandfather told me to chew every bite 17 times. And then all of a sudden, everything was great because, you know, filial piety. And I was such a good granddaughter. Another time, I went to a student's home, and their grandmother was there, and she had bound feet. And she was so proud of them. It was a mark of beauty to have bound feet. Of course, I held my stomach in, and it was really surprising to me, but I'm glad I had that experience. And we were going to take photographs, and she would not allow there to be a photograph with 3 people, because the middle person was going to be in serious trouble because of that, being in the middle. So we had to have 4, 2, or whatever. And I thought that was unusual as well. My students took me on a trip in the evening through the night market, which was really fun. Lots of food being offered and various things going on. And the students took me to a fortune teller. The thing that was different about this fortune teller was that he read faces. Surprising. And so I had one question about my face, and that was, I have a crease right here, and most people don't have that crease. So I was dying to find out what that meant about me. And so I asked, and it was translated back to me that that face, my face, would not have been mine unless I had that crease. Big help. But he also told me that I would marry a foreigner. And I thought, oh wow, and I had a correspondence with an English friend at that time, so I thought, well, maybe him. Well, it wasn't until later that I tried to piece together whether he meant a foreigner to him or a foreigner to me. Anyway, so there were lots of experiences like that in Taiwan. And at the end of the year, I used the inheritance I got from my grandfather to buy a plane ticket. Now this doesn't exist anymore, but at that time you could buy a plane ticket and then go on any airline you wanted that would take you west. So I left Taiwan and I went west to Japan and west to Hong Kong and west to Bali, etc. And when I was in Japan, I arrived and I was tired and I hadn't really planned well, and so I was stumbling around trying to figure out where I could eat. And I was going down this street and everything seemed to be locked up. And all of a sudden I came to a doorway that had a half curtain, and it sounded like there were people inside. So I opened up the curtain to look inside, and everybody stared at me. And then all of a sudden there were big welcoming gestures and, you know, come in, come in. And I thought, oh, okay. And it turned out this was an eatery. And they started serving me food, and they would not take any payment. So I was like so amazed to think that my first night in Japan, I was being treated in such a good manner. And so that boded well for the rest of the trip. And then I celebrated our bicentennial in Kyoto. I found one other American there. And then went to Bali, which was, oh my gosh, it's such a smart plan. I don't want to go back because I'm sure it's ruined from my imagination. Bali is an island with a little peninsula, and they kept the tourists on the little peninsula, rich ones on one side and poor ones on the other, and then the rest of the island was given over to the natives who could practice. Every town had a different skill. So one might be wood carving, and another might be painting on something, and another might be batiking. So it was just ideal, and there were not very many tourists at that time. So I don't know what it's like now, but I'm not going to go find out. It was gorgeous. Then I went to Singapore, and in Singapore I had, many of the places I went to I had contacts, and I did have a YMCA person who was teaching in Singapore. I thought that was the most sterile city I had ever been to, and I didn't like it very much. I felt like I couldn't really do anything, or somebody would be watching and reprimand me. Then I flew to Singapore, and this was a contact I had in Singapore, which was a friend, the son of a friend of my father's. And he was a banker, Manny Hanny, manufacturer of Hanover, not in existence anymore. But it was a chance for me to see what Americans who had jobs overseas, what it was like. So I was at the YMCA when all of a sudden the chauffeur and the person I was going to meet came into the Y. Now we were, you know, it was just a normal people at the Y, but they picked up my bags and took me to the residence of this banker. And it was a huge compound, swimming pool and grass and a tall fence all around it. And the second floor maid came down and took my luggage, such as it was, and I was like in shock because it was not a rich country, and the people were modest, and all of a sudden I was thrown into this world of privilege. And so the lady of the house said she'd like to create a special event for me, so a cultural event, and the next day we went to, and all the ladies in her circle, all the Europeans and Americans in her circle went to a temple, and we had a guide who took us through the temple, and it was all very nice and very protected, and we didn't see many local people. So the next day I thought, okay, enough of this. I said, I'm going to go out on my own, if you don't mind, and I did, and went to a smart snake farm and met some people that took me to a village where they had a huge kite, which they kept in the central part of the village, and oh, it was just a wonderful time. Then, after that, so that was the colonial kind of overlay. Then I went to Nepal, and that was pretty amazing. I was so psyched because somebody I met said, welcome me to come to their home, and I thought, oh, a real Nepalese family. And I got there, and he had a French wife, and it was a good meal, but it was not the experience I was hoping to get. Next, I went to India, to New Delhi. And there I got an opportunity to go to Agra and the Taj Mahal with some guy that picked me up. You know, I was only 21 and having fun. Well, actually 22 by that stage. And then we were just picnicking and looking at the Taj Mahal, which is gorgeous. And I walked in, and somebody admonished me to take off my shoes. So I did, and then I went up above, and all of a sudden I had this feeling of so many ancestors and hard times and terrible things going on. And what they did was, unfortunately, all the slaves who built the Taj Mahal were killed afterwards, so they couldn't take their story, you know, the building tricks, etc. So I had to get out of there. I couldn't even breathe when I was in the Taj Mahal. So I ran out and I got away, but that was an experience I've never had since. And then I had a choice. Would I go to Afghanistan or would I go to Iran? I thought, oh, Iran will always be around. I'll go to Afghanistan. That's kind of interesting. And there was a friend of my sister's there that I had contact with, and so I wrote a letter. And when I got there, I was invited to go to his family's home. Now, he had been on the AFS program, and as you might guess, only the privileged people could go on an exchange program like that to study in the United States. And so then I got picked up and taken down these narrow streets to the family compound. Now the family compound was interesting. You went through a gate that was like nothing. It would not attract anybody going down that little narrow road. But then you walked into this compound, and there were all these outer buildings and animals and busy people doing things. And I thought, oh, so this is how they live. And then I was taken to the father's home, and that was, I don't know if you remember 1976, but miniskirts were one of the, was what you wore. And so I had a dress, because I thought I would dress up to go visit. And I was led in to the home, and the door opened, and there were all these, there was a beaded door in front of me, and all these tittering voices. Those were the women who were behind the curtain and could not come out when there was a guest. And they were all kind of amazed at what I looked like and what I was wearing. And then I was led to this Muslim, it was a Muslim family, and a very low table where all the men sat around, and I had to figure out how to sit in my miniskirt. I was treated like an honorary man. I was only 26, and I was just amazed that I maneuvered this so well. I sort of sat with my legs going in the back, and almost as if I were a side saddle. And it was a fascinating dinner and a fascinating conversation. And this was the man who had been the Minister of Education and had opened up the first museum in Afghanistan. It had all the artifacts, historic artifacts, and it was the museum that was destroyed a little later on. You might remember some of that. Anyway, I've just highlighted a few experiences, and I will leave the stage to the next person, because, anyway, thank you so much.